All right, question 1. We've got a short argumentative passage about those notorious tech interview brain teasers. Why are manhole covers round? And so on. The author notes two things early. They're popular, and they don't predict ability or personality. Then we get a psychological account. Interviewers use them to feel superior, which suggests narcissistic or sadistic tendencies. Finally, a value statement. Nobody wants to work for someone like that. What's the upshot? When a passage mixes description, evidence, and a recommendation, the main conclusion is usually the piece of advice the author most wants you to accept. Here, that advice is spelled out quite plainly. Applicants who face brain teasers would be well advised to reconsider their interest in working for such companies. Everything else, ineffectiveness of the questions, the unflattering motives of interviewers, and the no one wants to work for them, supports this conclusion. Line serves to justify that recommendation. Notice the alternatives. Statements about popularity, A, and lack of insight, B, are supporting claims. The personality diagnosis, C, is part of the explanation, not the destination. And no one wants to work for someone like that, E, is a general value claim used to push the practical advice, not the final claim itself. So the main conclusion is the recommendation directed at applicants. Think twice about working for companies that use these questions. That's exactly option D. Final answer, D, because the passage's argument builds toward advising applicants to reconsider working for companies that use brain teaser interviews. All right, question 2. We've a Christmas tree with 3 sets of fairy lights. Blue flash every 5 seconds, green every 8, and silver every 12. They've just flashed together, and we're asked how many more coincidences occur in the next 45 minutes. This is a classic when do cycles line up job. The key is the common period when all 3 sequences coincide, the least common multiple of 5, 8, and 12 seconds. Looking at the timings in the prompt, 5, 8, 12, let's factor. 5 is 5, 8 is 2 cubed, and 12 is 2 squared times 3. Take the highest powers. 2 cubed times 3 times 5 equals 120 seconds. So they all flash together every 120 seconds, which is a neat 2 minutes. Now, how many such alignments occur in the next 45 minutes? We're counting after the just now, so we don't include time 0. Divide. 45 minutes divided by 2 minutes equals 22.5 periods. We only count whole occurrences strictly within the interval, so that's 22 times, at 2, 4, 6, 44 minutes. There isn't one exactly at 45 minutes, so we don't round up. Quick double check in seconds. 45 minutes is 2,700 seconds. 2,700 divided by 120 equals 22, remainder 60. Same conclusion. Therefore, the answer is 22, option B. The trick is spotting the LCM and minding the endpoints. All right, question 3. We're told a supermarket will replace plastic produce bags and 5P single-use bags with compostable ones, saving 134 million bags, about 500 tons of plastic a year. Then comes the punchline. There are problems with compostable bags. Therefore, the plan should be opposed. This is the classic perfect is the enemy of the good move. Pointing out that the replacement isn't flawless doesn't, by itself, justify opposing the plan. To make that case, you'd need to show that the problems with compostable bags are at least as bad as, or worse than, the harms from traditional plastic. Otherwise, the net effect could still be positive. Now, which option captures that? Option D says the argument fails to show that the problems with compostable bags would be as severe as those associated with plastic. That's exactly the missing comparison. The others. A complains it doesn't prove saving 500 tons won't be beneficial. An odd burden shift. We don't need to prove it's not beneficial. We need to weigh benefits against costs. B says it considers only one alternative. That's not the core flaw here. C talks about assuming compostables can be used for the same range of items, irrelevant to the stated reasoning. E says it fails to provide evidence of benefits to removing plastic. But the STEM provides that context, 500 tons saved, and the flaw is not lack of benefits, but failure to balance them against the new problems. So the best answer is D. The argument opposes the plan merely because the alternative isn't perfect, without showing those problems are comparable in seriousness to plastic's harms. Final answer, D, because it fails to compare the severity of the new problems with the existing ones. All right, question 4. The passage argues a simple principle. If you voluntarily agree to an action, then the action itself, by the party you agreed with, isn't unjust to you, unless there was force or coercion. You may dislike the wider circumstances, but the consenting act isn't exploitation in the moral sense the author targets. So which option mirrors that? We want a case where someone knowingly consents to a risky or disadvantageous arrangement, and therefore can't claim unjust treatment about the very thing they agreed to. Option A, going to a war zone isn't consenting to kidnapping. The captor's act isn't covered by that consent, so this doesn't fit. Option B, a patient gives fully informed consent to a trial and then experiences the stated side effects. That's exactly the structure. You consented to the risk. The occurrence of the risk isn't an injustice by the trial team. This looks spot on. Option C, breach of contract leading to dismissal is about consequences of misconduct, not about consent negating injustice in a treatment you receive. Different principle. Option D, giving your card details doesn't mean you consented to fraud. The fraud is a separate wrongful act. So no. Option E, voting outcomes and fairness claims are unrelated to voluntary agreement with a specific action upon you. So the closest analog to consent removes the charge of injustice in the agreed act is B. Final answer, B, because informed consent to known side effects precludes complaint about those side effects as unjust treatment by the researchers. All right, question 5. We're told what a genuine apology is, an expression of regret and repentance by the person who actually did the wrong. Then we get 3 kinds of counterexamples. Ministers apologizing for past government's policies they didn't commit, those slippery, "I'm sorry if anyone was offended," formulations that shift blame to the hearer, and apologies made under duress, children compelled by parents. Putting that together, the passage contrasts the definition with instances that fall short of it, either because the speaker isn't the wrongdoer, or there's no real repentance, or there's coercion. The safe conclusion is that some things presented as apologies don't meet the stated criteria of a genuine apology. Notice what the passage does not do. It doesn't endorse apologizing for others as appropriate. It merely notes it happens. It doesn't lay down a moral rule that one should apologize whenever offense is caused. It highlights a problematic phrasing. Nor does it assert a philosophical view about the continuity of government identity. That would be an inference beyond the text. And it certainly doesn't make forgiveness conditional on sincerity. Nothing on forgiveness at all. So the conclusion that directly follows from the juxtaposition of definition and counterexamples is, some apparent apologies are not genuine. That's option D.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate. He knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 6. We're told the ciphertext is JYMDWEFT, produced by a Caesar shift, and we're given one crucial clue. The first plaintext letter is X, so I match that to the first ciphertext letter, J. The question is, what constant shift takes X to J? Counting forward, X to J wraps around the alphabet and comes out as a shift of 12. So the encryption is plus 12, which means decryption is minus 12. Now we just need the sixth plaintext letter. That's the sixth letter of the ciphertext, which is E. Shifting E back by 12 places lands on S. If you'd like a quick sanity check, I can decode the start. J back 12 is X. Y back 12 is M. M back 12 is A. D back 12 is R. W back 12 is K. And then our sixth, E back 12, is S. That's consistent with the known first letter X, so the shift is right, and our target letter is S. Therefore, the sixth letter of the decrypted message is S. Final answer, D. Alright, question 7. Gordon wants one brand of cycling mask for the whole family, 2 adults and 2 children. They ride both in town and in a forest. Extra wrinkles, Joe has pollen-triggered asthma, and the son has clothing allergies, so hypoallergenic matters. Looking at this table of 5 masks, I'm going to list the non-negotiables first. We need sizes for both adults and children, dust and pollen filtration for Joe, hypoallergenic for the son, suitable for both urban and rural use. Exhaust fumes feel very relevant in town, so I'll keep an eye on that, but it wasn't stated as a strict requirement. Replaceable filters and cold weather are nice-to-haves at most. Now, scan the size rows. GXI and Speed don't have children's sizes. Out immediately. That leaves Air 1, OptiAir, and Breathe. Next, urban and rural suitability. Air 1 is rural only, no tick for urban, so that can't cover town rides. We're down to OptiAir and Breathe, both urban and rural. Check the health-specific needs. Dust and pollen filtration, both OptiAir and Breathe have ticks. Hypoallergenic? Aha! OptiAir has a cross. Breathe has a tick. That's decisive because of the sun's allergies. Just to confirm, Breathe also filters exhaust fumes, handy for urban cycling. It lacks replaceable filters and cold weather suitability, but those weren't required. So the only brand that satisfies adults plus children, urban and rural, pollen filtration and hypoallergenic is Breathe. Final answer E, because it's the only option meeting all the family's stated needs. Alright, question 8. We have 2 26-bit transmissions, and the same 12-bit message is hidden somewhere, once in each. So the task is simply to find which 12-bit option appears as a contiguous substring in both 26-bit strings. Looking at the first transmission, I skim for obvious 12-bit chunks. A quick trick is to slide a 12-bit window along and note any exact matches with the options. Immediately I spot, around the middle, the chunk 0010100. That's option A. So A is present in the first transmission. Good start, but of course it must appear in the second transmission too, so keep going. I continue scanning the first transmission and see 1011101010 appear starting a little earlier. That matches option D in the first string. Now I switch to the second transmission and run the same sliding window check. I notice fairly quickly a 12-bit block, 00111110 in the second string. That's option B. And further on, I find 111110110112, option E. Crucially, later in the second transmission, I also find 1011101010, the same chunk I'd already spotted in the first transmission. At that point, I've got the overlap. Option D, 10111010, occurs in both transmissions. The others are present in one transmission or the other, but not both. So the hidden 12-bit message must be D. Final answer, D, because 10111010 appears as a contiguous substring in both 26-bit transmissions. All right, question 9. We've got a short argument about the decline in part-time undergraduate study. It opens with a statistic and a value judgment. Numbers are down by more than 50%, and that's a lost opportunity. Then we get a clear policy statement. More needs to be done to provide support for people to take short, flexible, part-time courses. After that, they bring in survey evidence about barriers. Flexibility matters to many, but financial concerns are most important. The structure here is classic. Background context, then a recommendation, then evidence that underpins the recommendation. The statistics about flexibility and finances aren't the point in themselves. They're used to justify the claim that we need to do more to support part-time learners, especially with flexible provision and affordability. So the main conclusion is the normative ought claim, not the descriptive bits. The fall in numbers and the lost opportunity line serve as premises to motivate action. Likewise, the survey findings about financial and flexibility barriers are supporting reasons, not the thesis. Therefore, the best expression of the main conclusion is more needs to be done to provide support for people to take short, flexible, part-time courses. That's option C. All right, question 10. The passage claims mobiles were meant to liberate us, yet supposedly made us less mobile. We're more sedentary and indoors, so we should dub them immobile phones. The key move is a causal one. Because phones let us get information and communicate from home, they're portrayed as the reason we go out less. To weaken that, the best tactic is to challenge the causal link. If the same increase in staying indoors happens among people who don't own mobiles, then mobiles can't be the decisive cause of reduced mobility. That's exactly what option E gives us. Non-owners show the same trend. That undercuts the argument's central claim. By contrast, saying not everyone owns a phone, A, doesn't touch the general trend. Noting other tech exists, B, doesn't show what's driving the change. It could even support staying in. Phones used for fitness, C, is wishful, in the hope, and doesn't show actual increased mobility. And while it's true people leave home for many reasons beyond info or communication, D, that doesn't directly rebut the presented evidence of more time indoors overall. So the strongest weakening is evidence that the purported effect occurs independently of the alleged cause. That's option E. All right, question 11. The core pattern is a negative attitude is rooted in a mistaken belief about a characteristic. The belief is false, so if corrected, the attitude would likely change. Fear of snakes tied to slimy skin, but snakes aren't slimy. Thus, better information should reduce the fear. We want an option where a refusal or negative stance is grounded in a false stereotype or misconception, and correcting that specific misconception would plausibly reverse the stance. Option E mirrors this precisely. People won't vote conservative because they think conservatives are all posh, but not all are. If informed, they'd be willing to vote for them. That's the same structure. The others drift. A gives a prescription to stop using Facebook, not attitude change from correcting a false belief. B lacks the explicit link that feeders believe the opposite claim. C is about explaining a phenomenon, not changing an attitude. D changes topic and form entirely. So the parallel is E. All right, question 12. We've a buffet with fixed prices, $10 per adult and $6 per child. There's also a family meal ticket, $400 for the year, covering unlimited visits for 2 adults and 2 children. If a family has more than 2 children, each additional child pays half the children's price per visit, so that's $3. The Monroes are 2 adults and 3 children, and they visited 30 times. Let's compare 2 totals. First, paying per visit. 2 adults at $10 is $20. 3 children at $6 is $18, so $38 per visit. Over 30 visits, that's 30 times 38 equals $1,140. Now, with the family meal ticket, The base is $400 for the year, which fully covers 2 adults and 2 children. The third child pays $3 each visit, and they went 30 times. So 30 times $3 equals $90 extra. Ticket total, $400 plus $90 equals $490. Savings is the difference. $1,140 minus $490 equals $650. So the ticket saved them $650. That's option D, a neat example of turning a wordy pricing scheme into 2 clean totals and comparing them. All right, question 13. We've a breakfast deal. Choose any 4 out of 6 items: bacon, sausage, eggs, toast, tomatoes, beans. 2 taboos. He won't have bacon with sausage, and he won't have egg with beans. On the page, the 6 items are just listed, no diagram, so I'll think in sets. First instinct is to start enumerating acceptable 4s, but that can get fiddly. Better to count all possible 4s and subtract the forbidden ones. Total ways to pick 4 from 6 is 6 choose 4, which is 15. Now, what's illegal? Sets that contain both bacon and sausage. If we force those 2 in, we need 2 more chosen from the remaining 4 items: eggs, toast, tomatoes, beans. That's 4 choose 2 equals 6 bad sets. Sets that contain both egg and beans. Same logic. Choose 2 more from the other 4. Bacon, sausage, toast, tomatoes. Again, 6 bad sets. But I've double-counted the 1 set that contains both forbidden pairs at once. Bacon, sausage, egg, beans. That's exactly 1 combination, and it's been counted in both 6s, so add it back once. So total bad equals 6 plus 6 minus 1 equals 11. Therefore, acceptable equals 15 minus 11 equals 4. I briefly considered casework, like choose bacon not sausage and so on, but inclusion-exclusion is quicker and cleaner here. Final answer, 4 acceptable combinations. All right, question 14. We've got a survey of cyclists grouped by age, and the table gives cumulative percentages. Up to 10 years is 15%. Up to 18 is 50%. Up to 40 is 80%. Up to 60 is 90%. And up to 85 is 100%. Only 1 actual number is filled in. In the row up to 10 years, the number of cyclists is 270. First thought, is that 270 the cumulative count, or just that age group? For the first row, it doesn't matter. Up to 10 is both the first category and the cumulative up to that point. So 15% corresponds to 270 cyclists. That lets us scale to the whole survey. Total survey size is 270 divided by 0.15. Quick mental arithmetic, 270 divided 0.15 is the same as 2,700 divided by 1.5, which is 1,800. Good. We're asked, how many were above 40? The cumulative up to 40 years is 80%, so above 40 must be the remaining 20%. 20% of 1,800 is a fifth of it. 1,800 divided by 5 equals 360. I did briefly wonder if the 270 might be a non-cumulative band number, but since the first band and its cumulative coincide, either way, the total stays at 1,800, and the above 40 calculation is just 20% of that. So the number of cyclists above 40 is 360. Final answer, D. All right, question 15. The passage piles up research-based benefits of marriage: happier adults, better health, less crime, and then jumps to the policy claim. Therefore, the government should actively promote marriage. Indeed, it's justified and necessary. For that jump to work, there's a hidden normative bridge, that it's appropriate for the government to try to shape citizens' family arrangements. Without that, evidence of benefits doesn't by itself license state intervention. So I'm looking for an assumption about the government's right or remit here. Option B says exactly that. The government has a right to influence the family arrangements of its citizens. That underwrites the justified bit. The others don't. A is about public opinion, irrelevant. C claims it's the most important government task, far stronger than the argument. D says the government is already doing it, unneeded. E says welfare problems would be resolved by marriage, overstated and unnecessary. So the necessary assumption is B.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate. He knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 16. We've got an argument defending seatbelt laws by appealing to a paternalist principle. Sometimes the state is justified in overriding our immediate, short-sighted preferences to protect our long-term freedom and welfare, especially where risks are serious and irreversible. In other words, compel me now to keep me free and alive later. So what would best illustrate that same principle? We're looking for a legal requirement that directly constrains an individual's risky behavior for their own safety, not merely a nudge, not a public information campaign, and not a rule about paying for services or regulating companies. Option A, prohibiting pedestrians from crossing railway tracks except at designated points, is exactly that kind of paternalistic constraint. It limits a risky action to safeguard people from severe harm. Very seatbeltish, a legal restriction on the individual's behavior to prevent catastrophic consequences. Option B is about revenue protection, not your future self. Option C is just education, no compulsion. Option D, plain packs for cigarettes, is regulation of manufacturers and a nudge to consumers, but it doesn't require you, personally, to act in your long-term interest. Option E is advice. Again, no compulsion. So the closest analog to wear your seatbelt for your own good is don't cross the tracks except safely. That's A. Final answer, A, because it's a compulsory safety rule that restricts individual behavior to protect one's future self from serious harm. All right, question 17. We're told intensive farming is widely thought worse for the environment than organic, but a research team says the opposite, citing externalities like emissions, fertilizer, and water use. Their concrete evidence? A study of dairy farming in Switzerland showing high-yield systems were less damaging than organic for the same milk output. I won't narrate every internal step, but here's the key point. The claim being pushed is broad, about intensive versus organic farming in general, while the evidence is narrow, Swiss dairy in particular. That's a classic scope leap. Even if the Swiss case is robust, it doesn't license a global generalization across crops, climates, and systems. Quickly on the distractors. A says they confuse externalities with central issues. Not really. Externalities are precisely the environmental issues under discussion. B suggests an assumption about unused land going to environmental projects. That assumption isn't needed for their claim. C alleges circularity, claiming it's eco-friendly, then concluding it is. But they do offer evidence, albeit limited, so not circular. E talks about economic motives, which is irrelevant to assessing environmental impact. So the flaw is overgeneralizing from a specific example to a universal claim. That's option D. Final answer, D, because the argument bases a broad conclusion on a single context-specific study. All right, question 18. Tim's in New York, Eastern. Jerry's in San Francisco, Pacific, and they're meeting in Oklahoma, Central. Looking at the table, everything is pegged to Pacific. Mountain is +1 hour, Central +2, Eastern +3. I'll anchor everything to one clock to avoid the classic time zone tangle. Pacific works nicely because the table's already in that frame. First, Tim. He ends up on the 12 p.m. flight local to New York. That's Eastern. Eastern is Pacific plus 3, so 12 p.m. Eastern Time is 9 a.m. Pacific Time. The flight is 4 hours. Add 4 to 9 a.m. Pacific Time gives 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Now convert to Central, Pacific Time plus 2. 1 p.m. Pacific Time becomes 3 p.m. Central Time. So Tim lands at 3 p.m. Oklahoma Time. Now Jerry. He leaves San Francisco at 6 a.m. Pacific Time by train for 2 hours to Salt Lake City. That gets him to 8 a.m. Pacific Time, which locally in Mountain is 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Fine. He immediately boards a bus for 6 hours. Add 6 hours to 8 a.m. Pacific Time equivalent, and you reach 2 p.m. Pacific Time equivalent. Convert that to Central by adding 2 hours. That's 4 p.m. Central. I briefly wondered if both might coincide, but the single clock method shows it cleanly. Tim, 3 p.m. Central Time, Jerry, 4 p.m. Central Time. Therefore, Tim arrives 1 hour before Jerry. Answer D. Tim arrived in Oklahoma 1 hour before Jerry. Alright, question 19. A family of 7 want to go to Rock World Zoo and will book online 1 day in advance. The party is Martha, turning 16, her mom and dad, 3 brothers aged 14, 12, and 9, and grandmother aged 62. Looking at the tariff table for booked online 1 day in advance, adult $15, senior $13, child $11, family of 4 $49, family of 5 $57. My immediate thought is to try family packs because they usually give the biggest saving. If I naively treat Martha as 16, an adult, the group would be 3 adults, 3 children, and 1 senior. I check family of 5, 2 adults plus 3 children, costing $57. That covers 2 adults and 3 children, leaving 1 adult and a senior. 57 plus 15 plus 13 equals $85. That's not an offered option. So I pause and recheck the problem statement. Important detail. They can go either on Martha's birthday or the day before it. If they choose the day before, Martha is still 15 and counts as a child. That changes the optimal packing. So let's compare the cheaper scenario. Visit the day before, Martha equals child. Then we have 2 adults, 4 children, and 1 senior. Now test sensible packings. Use a family of 5 as 2 adults plus 3 children for $57. That uses both adults and 3 of the children. Remaining are 1 child, $11, and the senior, $13. Total equals 57 plus 11 plus 13 equals $81. Try family of 5 as 1 adult plus 4 children, also allowed. That would leave 1 adult and 1 senior. 57 plus 15 plus 13 equals $85. So, worse. Try family of 4 options, e.g. family of 4, 2 adults plus 2 children for $49 leaves 2 children and 1 senior. 49 plus 2, 11 plus 13 equals $84. A bit higher than 81. All individual tickets. 2 times 15 plus 4 times 11 plus 13 equals 87. So the cheapest I can find is the $57 family of 5 used as 2 adults plus 3 children, plus 1 extra child ticket and the senior ticket, totaling $81. That's option B. The neat trick was noticing the flexibility about the birthday. Shifting Martha from adult to child saves money. Final answer, B, $81. Alright, question 20. We're comparing departments by average spend per customer. That's simply total sales divided by number of customers. Since both charts are pies, the overall totals cancel. We just compare each department's slice in sales against its slice in customers. Looking at the sales pie, clothes and food are the 2 big slices. The other 2, stationery and furniture, are smaller. Now the customer's pie, food gobbles more than half the circle. Clothes is about a quarter. Stationery is a decent wedge, and furniture is a mere sliver. Average spend rises when a department has a relatively big sales slice but a small customer slice. Furniture leaps out. Tiny customer slice, yet a non-tiny share of sales. That must be the highest average spend. At the other extreme, food has masses of customers but only a similar-sized sales share to clothes, so its average per customer will be the lowest. Between clothes and stationery, clothes has a larger share of sales than its share of customers, whereas stationery's two slices are similar. If anything, customers a touch larger. So clothes beats stationery. So the order is furniture highest, then clothes, then stationery, then food. That matches option E. I might have been tempted by A at first glance because clothes has strong sales, but the furniture sliver on the customers chart is the giveaway. Final answer, E. Because furniture's high-ticket purchases from very few customers push its average above the rest. Food's many customers dilute its average. All right, question 21. We've got a short argument about whether we should reply to an alien transmission. It opens by acknowledging a worry. Maybe we should keep quiet because aliens might not be peaceable. Then it pivots. In truth, it's already too late for that. We've been broadcasting unintentionally for decades, and any civilization capable of threatening us would surely have the technology to detect that leakage. So the overall thrust isn't stay silent, or aliens are dangerous, but rather the silent strategy is moot. That's the author's central claim. We shouldn't worry now about keeping quiet because the horse has bolted. Now, look at the options. A restates the initial caution, but that's the view the author ultimately rejects. B is a premise, uncertainty about aliens' intentions, used to motivate the original worry. D is a supporting consideration. It's easier to detect signals than to launch weapons, which underpins the idea that advanced aliens would have heard us already. E is close, but it's a subordinate conclusion. Any society that can threaten Earth can pick up our leakage. That supports the real point. It isn't the main conclusion itself. The only option that captures the author's ultimate message is C. It's too late to worry about keeping silent if we come across an alien transmission. So, final answer, C. The main conclusion is that the precaution of silence is no longer a live option. All right, question 22. We've got an argument that says supplements work, but not enough women take them. So the government's information campaign isn't doing the job. Therefore, we should fortify staple foods with folic acid because it reaches women automatically and is said to be harmless to everyone else. What would most strengthen that? The key vulnerability is timing and uptake. Women need folic acid in the very early phase, ideally before conception. So the strongest support will show why relying on women to choose supplements is unreliable right when it matters, and why a population-level approach solves that. Option B hits the bullseye. Women may not realize they're pregnant until after the first months have passed. That means starting supplements later is too late to prevent neural tube defects. Fortification ensures folate is already present in their diets beforehand. That directly reinforces the case for mandatory fortification. The others either weaken or wander off. A suggests fewer women eat flour, which would undercut the effectiveness of fortification. C proposes adding folic acid at home, impractical and not better than supplements. D flags objections about interference. If anything, that's a counterpoint. E raises other nutrients, true but irrelevant to this folic acid-specific claim. So B most strongly supports the argument by addressing the crucial timing problem. Final answer, B. All right, question 23. We're told prison conditions are dire, with two competing explanations on offer. Some blame privatization, others blame funding cuts that hit both public and private prisons. But then the author steps back and says, in effect, regardless of the management or funding story, the deeper issue is public indifference. And why the indifference? Because we can more easily picture ourselves needing a good hospital than a well-functioning criminal justice system. So what follows? Not that one cause is definitively right. That's explicitly left open. Nor that the public is unaware. The author says we don't care, not that we don't know. And not that the government has actually prioritized hospitals in spending. That would require evidence about budgets, which we're not given. The cleanest inference is about public support. If people can more readily imagine needing hospitals and care less about prisons, they're more likely to back hospital spending than prison spending. That's exactly what option A states. The others either assert a contested cause, C, D, confuse apathy with ignorance, B, or make a claim about actual spending priorities we're not told about, E. So the best conclusion drawn from the passage is A, because it captures the author's point about public attitudes shaping willingness to support funding. Final answer, A. All right, question 24. A little magnets and titles puzzle. We're told the cinema has just enough sets of magnetic letters to write Star Wars: The Force Awakens, where each set contains one of every capital and one of every small letter. They now want the whole title in capitals, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and we must find the minimum extra sets to buy. First impression, just enough sets means the cinema's current number of sets, call it S, is exactly the smallest number that supplies the highest demand for any single letter case in the original title. So we should count how many times any particular capital letter appears, and how many times any particular small letter appears in the original version. S must be at least the largest of those counts. Let's count quickly. In the original version, the capitals are Star, S-T-A-R, each once. Wars, W-A-R-S, each once. So A-R-S-T get repeats. Then the words The Force Awakens have initial capitals T, F, A, respectively. T ends up capital twice, Star and The. A is capital 3 times, Star Wars Awakens. S and R and T are capital twice in spots, and lowercase e appears 3 times across The Force Awakens. So, the maximum number of identical capitals required is 3. A appears as a capital 3 times, and the maximum number of identical lowercase letters required is also 3. E appears 3 times. So S equals 3 sets. Now convert everything to capitals. We need the total number of each letter irrespective of case. The letter A appears in Star 1, Wars 1, and twice in Awakens. There's an initial A and another A. That's 4 A's in total. Other heavy hitters, S, R, and E, each total 3. Many letters need 1 or 2. With 3 sets, they currently have only 3 uppercase A's, but the all-caps title needs 4. So they must buy at least 1 more set to reach 4 uppercase A's. 1 extra set, making S equals 4, supplies 4 copies of every uppercase letter, which is enough for the rest. I briefly thought perhaps no extra sets would be needed, but checking the total count for A reveals the pivot. A equals 4, so 1 extra set is necessary. Final answer, B, 1 extra set. All right, question 25. We've a bakery selling 2 loaf sizes. Small loaves weigh 240 grams, large 400 grams. The twist is the baking shrinkage. Each loaf loses 20% from the unbaked dough to the baked loaf. And we buy dough only in boxes, 5 kilograms or 15 kilograms. First thing, convert the sold weights back to unbaked dough. If baking loses 20%, then baked weight is 80% of dough weight. So the dough required is baked weight divided by 0.8. For a small loaf, 240 grams divided by 0.8 equals 300 grams of dough. For a large, 400 grams divided by 0.8 equals 500 grams. Now, the day's target is 40 small and 50 large. That's 40 times 300 grams equals 12 kilograms for smalls, and 50 times 500 grams equals 25 kilograms for larges. Total dough needed, 12 plus 25 equals 37 kilograms. We must buy in 5 kilogram or 15 kilogram boxes, and not any more than necessary, i.e., the smallest total at least 37 kilograms. The totals we can buy are multiples of 5. The smallest multiple of 5 that reaches 37 is 40 kilograms. That's achievable. For instance, 8 5-kilogram boxes or 1 15 kilogram plus 5 5 kilogram, etc. So 40 kilograms is the minimal purchase. How much is left over to throw away? We use 37 kilograms. We bought 40 kilograms. So waste is 3 kilograms. Proportion wasted is 3 divided by 40 equals 0.075, i.e., 7.5%. Quick check. Don't let the box prices distract you. The question asks about proportion of dough thrown away, not cost. And the 20% loss is already accounted for when computing the dough requirement. Therefore, the answer is 7.5%, option C. We are asked for a graph that shows the difference, urban minus rural, in percentage access to clean water for each country. Compute the differences from the table. Angola, 40 minus 34 equals 6. Botswana, 100 minus 90 equals 10. Malawi, 95 minus 44 equals 51. Mozambique, 81 minus 41, 40. Namibia, 100 minus 67, 33. Tanzania, 90 minus 57, 33. Zambia, 88 minus 48 equals 40. Zimbabwe, 100 minus 73 equals 27. So the 8 bar heights should be left to right in the same country order. 6, 10, 51, 40, 33, 33, 40, 27. Option E shows exactly those relative heights with a y-axis scaled to 0 to 60, so the 51% difference for Malawi fits well, and small bars for Angola and Botswana, a very tall bar for Malawi, mid-high bars for Mozambique, Zambia, and the other intermediate values in the correct positions. Other choices are incorrect. C and D show values around 80 to 100. These are the raw urban percentages, not differences. A and B have similar-looking bars, but the heights and ordering do not match all 8 computed differences as accurately as E. Therefore, E is the graph that correctly represents urban-rural percentage differences for the 8 countries. All right, question 27. We're told Rona sees sensitive material in the course of her work and teases friends about it. The conclusion says she shouldn't, because it's wrong to reveal sensitive information known only through one's professional role. So the principle is, do not disclose work-acquired confidential information. Now, we want an illustration of that principle. Option A, reporting evidence of terrorism. That's about a duty to disclose for public safety, essentially an exception to confidentiality, so it doesn't illustrate the stated principle. Option B, police officers dismissed for passing confidential case information to journalists. That is exactly the principle. They have information by virtue of their work, and it's wrong to disclose it. Option C, doctors and nurses accessing records to treat patients. That's about appropriate access, not wrongful disclosure. Different point. Option D, ex-partner sharing private information. That's about privacy, but not information gained through a professional role. So it doesn't map to the known only because of their work bit. Option E, teachers reporting concerns about families. Again, like A, it recommends disclosure in a safeguarding context, an exception, not an illustration of the don't reveal rule. So the clean match to the principle is B. Final answer, B, because it condemns disclosing confidential information acquired solely through one's work. All right, question 28. The core structure here is a conditional. If late, then fired. Then it goes, you were fired, so you must have been late. That's the classic fallacy of affirming the consequent. If P, then Q, Q therefore P. So we want the option that mirrors that flawed move. Option A uses a necessary condition. You need a card to use the gym, and then correctly infers you can't use the gym without it. Valid reasoning, not our target. Option B also uses the contrapositive. If successful, then insists on punctuality. Doesn't insist, so not successful. Again, valid. Option C, if no helmet, then disciplinary action. No action, therefore helmet worn. That's contrapositive. Valid, even if phrased always worn. Option D, if you turn up the volume, the music gets louder. Music is loud, so you must have turned it up. That's precisely affirming the consequent, matching the flaw in the original. Option E, getting close is sufficient to anger. They are getting close, so it will get angry. That's straightforward modus ponens. Valid. So the only one that closely parallels the faulty reasoning is D. All right, question 29. We're told energy providers are pushing smart meters because they allegedly help you control usage and lower bills. Then the author pivots with a however, which is a classic sign we're about to get the author's own stance. The sentence that follows, you should refuse to have one installed, is the take-home message they want us to accept. Everything after that is support. The meter merely reports usage. It doesn't propose cheaper alternatives, so the data isn't useful to customers. Rather, it's more useful to companies. Those are reasons marshaled to justify the refusal. Now, let's check the options. A and B restate the pro-smart meter case presented at the start. Those are background claims, not the author's conclusion. D, smart meters cannot suggest ways. That's one of the author's supporting points, not the main point itself. E says the information is only useful to the companies, but the passage actually says it's far more useful to them, not exclusively useful. So E overstates and still isn't the conclusion. The core claim the argument is trying to get us to accept is plainly, you should refuse to have a smart meter installed. That's option C. So the best answer is C, because it captures the author's main conclusion, signposted by however, with the rest serving as supporting reasons. All right, question 30. We've got a party, 100 invited, 80 attending. Last week they bought some food with a supermarket offer, 10% off if you spend more than $75. They paid $108 and say that covers 60 people. Now they need enough for 80, so 20 more people's worth to buy this afternoon. First instinct is to take what was paid per head. $108 for 60 people is $1.80 each, so 20 more would be $36. Tempting, but wait, that $108 included a 10% discount. Today's top-up won't reach the $75 threshold and may not even be on offer, so we shouldn't use the discounted per-head cost. Let's back out the full price of the first shop. If $108 was after 10% off, then before the discount, it was $108 divided by 0.9 equals $120. That $120 of full-price food feeds 60 people. So the undiscounted cost per person is $120 divided by 60 equals $2. For 20 additional people, at full price, that's 20 times $2 equals $40. And since $40 is below the $75 trigger, there's no further discount to apply. So the total price of the extra food needed this afternoon is $40. Therefore, option C. All right, question 31. 3 people going for 2 weeks, departing 21st of May, booking in early January, with some supplements and an early booking discount to apply. Looking at the table, the departure date 21st of May sits in the band May 14th to June 10th. For 14 nights, the price per person in that band is £1,050. So base cost for 3 people, 3 times 1,050 equals 3,150. Now the supplements. The Leah needs a single room. That's £11 per night for 14 nights. So 11 times 14 equals £154. Kyra wants a sea view for her and her husband. That's £3 per person per night. So 3 times 14 equals £42 each. For 2 people, that's £84. Add those to the base. 3,150 plus 154 plus 84 equals £3,388. Now the discount. My first instinct is to do a tiered discount, 5% on the first £2,500 and 10% on the rest. But the wording says 5% up to a total of £2,500 and 10% on any total above £2,500, which reads as either or. If the total exceeds £2,500, take 10% off the whole amount. So take 10% of £3,388, which is £338.80. Subtract that. £3,388 minus £338.80 equals £3,049.20. So the total cost of the hotel booking is £3,049.20, which matches option D. From the pies, we can read 2 definite facts. 1. The type pie. The milk sector is exactly half the circle, so there are 30 milk chocolates. The other half is split into 2 sectors, where the dark sector is twice the white sector. So the remaining 30 must be split 2 to 1. Hence, dark equals 20 and white equals 10. 2. The shape pie. 2 sectors are equal and larger. The third is smaller. So the counts for circle and square must be equal. And the triangle count must be the remaining smaller number. Now, check the tables against these requirements. The only table whose column totals give dark equals 20, milk equals 30, white equals 10 is option E. E totals by type. Dark, 9 plus 9 plus 2 equals 20. Milk, 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 30. White, 4 plus 4 plus 2 equals 10. And E also has equal totals for circle and square, 23 and 23, with triangle equals 14. Matching the left pie, 2 equal larger sectors and 1 smaller. No other option both matches the type totals, 20, 30, 10, and has circle and square equal. Therefore, E is the only table consistent with the pie charts. Alright, question 33. We're told rats thrive in cities. Cities are growing. Warfarin has been the go-to control. Rats are developing resistance and passing it on, and crucially, we do not yet have an alternative. From this, the author concludes the rat population will continue to increase as cities grow. For that conclusion to hold, the linchpin is control. If warfarin stops working and nothing else replaces it, the urban environment plus growing cities will indeed push numbers up. So what must be assumed? That no effective alternative will be found in time to check that growth. That's exactly what option A states. Let's glance at the rest. B talks about warfarin's effectiveness for humans, irrelevant to whether it kills rats. C compares rats to other synerbic animals. Beside the point. The claim is about rat numbers, not relative danger. D says we have no protection against rat-borne disease, but disease risk doesn't determine population growth here. Control measures do. E claims all humans dislike rats. Color, not content. Our feelings don't drive the population dynamics in this argument. So the hidden step is projecting no current alternative into the future, assuming none will be found to halt the rise. That's A. Final answer, A. because the conclusion relies on there being no alternative to warfarin to control rats as cities expand. All right, question 34. The passage argues that because certain antisocial traits are probably inherited and outside a person's control, it's wrong to punish them, and therefore the justice system shouldn't imprison such offenders. The key slip is in tying imprisonment exclusively to moral blame and punishment. In reality, imprisonment serves multiple aims: public protection, deterrence, and sometimes rehabilitation, regardless of whether an offender could control the underlying trait. So even if the premises about difficulty of change or genetic disposition were granted, the conclusion that we shouldn't imprison does not follow. Among the options, the one that pinpoints this assumption is that it treats imprisonment as purely punitive. That's exactly option E. That best captures the flaw. All right, question 35. The passage argues we should rethink relying on charitable donations because two strategic flaws crop up. Unpopular but important causes get underfunded, and tax breaks for big donors drain government coffers that could fund comprehensive public services. So, to weaken this, we want something that shows the charitable model has a significant compensating advantage, ideally one that makes it better or at least competitive with a government-led approach. Scan the options. A is about people's preferences rather than outcomes. It doesn't touch whether the model works better. C is descriptive trivia. Numbers of charities vary, irrelevant to the core claim. D says some people prefer government help. That actually bolsters the case for public services, so it strengthens the passage, not weakens. E attacks charities for wasteful admin spending. Again, that strengthens the case against relying on them. B, however, says charities are often better than governments at testing innovative approaches that make a significant difference. That's precisely the kind of countervailing benefit that undercuts the passage's push to move away from the charitable model. If charities are better at innovation that meaningfully improves outcomes, the argument's compelling strategic reasons look less compelling. So the best weakening statement is B.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate, he knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 36. Two identical six-faced dice, each face showing one of six combinations: red, blue, green, crossed with square, circle. Looking at this little scoring table, we get 1 point for each circle showing, 1 point for each red shape showing, 1 point if both dice show the same shape, and 2 points if both dice are the same color. They even tell us the maximum is 7. That happens for 2 red circles. 2 for circles plus 2 for reds, plus 1 same shape plus 2 same color equals 7. My quick plan is to see which totals, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are achievable by mixing those contributions. Let me think of the components. Circles C equals 0, 1, 2, reds R equals 0, 1, 2, same shape S equals 0, 1, same color col equals 0, 2. Total T equals C plus R plus S plus col. First impressions. 5 and 7 look clearly possible. We've already found 7 and red square plus red circle gave 5. 3 seems plausible. 2 blue squares, 0 circle, plus 0 red, plus 1 same shape, plus 2 same color equals 3. So 3 and 5 are fine. I suspect 6 is the odd one out, because 7 is max and the point values are somewhat chunky. Note same color gives 2, but let's not leap. Check systematically. If both dice are same color, col equals 2. Then we need C plus R plus S equals desired minus 2. For 6, that would require C plus R plus S equals 4. Try same color red. R equals 2, so we need C plus S equals 2. But C equals 2 implies both circles, which forces S equals 1, giving C plus S equals 3, not 2. C equals 1 and S equals 1 is impossible, because C equals 1 means shapes differ, so S equals 0. So no solution. Same color non-red gives R equals 0, so C plus S equals 4. Impossible since C equals 2 and S equals 1. Its colors differ, call equals 0. The maximum C plus R plus S is 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5, so still short of 6. So 6 cannot be made. Thus 2, 3, 4, 5 are all achievable by simple examples, but 6 is not. Final answer, E. Alright. Question 37. A 6-day walking holiday, where some of the distance each day is by foot and some by bus. The bar chart gives the total distance covered on each day. Day 1, about 10 kilometers. Day 2, 15. Day 3, 20. Day 4, 25. Day 5, 20. And day 6, 30. So immediately I see the daily totals. My first quick thought, glancing at that final bar of 30, was, they did 30 kilometers on the last day, so perhaps 30 kilometers by bus? But I mustn't confuse total distance with bus distance. The text tells us on average they walked 15 kilometers per day over 6 days, so total walked equals 6 times 15 equals 90 kilometers. The chart's daily totals sum to 10 plus 15 plus 20 plus 25 plus 20 plus 30 equals 120 kilometers overall. If they covered 120 kilometers total and walked 90 kilometers of that, the remainder traveled by bus over the whole holiday is 120 minus 90 equals 30 kilometers. Crucially, we're also told that by the end of day 5, they had already done 30 kilometers by bus. So all 30 kilometers of bus travel had happened by day 5, leaving 0 kilometers by bus on day 6. That eliminates B, C, D, and E. The correct answer is A, 0 kilometers. Alright, question 38. We've a bar chart of male and female enrollments for 2016, 2017, 2018. We're asked which statement is not true. Let me read off the bars roughly. 2016 looks like males 25, females 35. In 2017, males about 65, females about 75. In 2018, males around 45, females about 70. Good enough for percentage reasoning. Percentages of each gender each year come from the totals. 2016 total 60, so males are 25 over 60, approximately 42%. Females approximately 58%. 2017 total 140, so males 65 over 140, approximately 46%, females approximately 54%. 2018 total 115, so males 45 over 115, approximately 39%, females approximately 61%. Now, test the options quickly. A. Did the percentage of males increase from 2016 to 2017? Yes, 42% to 46%. True. B. Did the percentage of females increase from 2017 to 2018? 54% to 61%. Yes, true. C. Did the percentage of males increase from 2016 to 2018? That would be 42% to 39%. No. That fell. So C is looking false. Tentatively, our answer. Let me just sanity check D and E, so there's only one false. D compares percentage changes in the number of males. From 2016 to 2017, males jump 25 to 65. That's plus 40 on a base of 25, about a 160% increase. From 2017 to 2018, they drop 65 to 45. Minus 20 on 65, about a 31% decrease. 160 is indeed greater than 31, true. E does the same for females. 35 to 75 is plus 40 on 35, about 114% increase. Then 75 to 70 is minus 5 on 75, about a 7% decrease. 114 beats 7. True. So the only statement that's not true is C. The male percentage did not increase from 2016 to 2018. It decreased. Final answer, C. Alright, question 39. I won't narrate my step-by-step thoughts, but here's the concise reasoning. The passage contrasts the popularity of the different planets idea with research showing no deep, unchangeable sex differences, and it notes headline bias. The central claim ties these together. The idea is both persistent and unsupported. Option C captures that exact thrust. The other options are supporting points. B is a key piece of evidence. A and E are background premises. And D brings in stumbling block to equality, which the passage doesn't argue. So the main conclusion is that the different planets notion is as unsupported as it is persistent. The original argument has this logical form. For P to occur, Q is necessary. P occurred, therefore Q occurred. Concretely, for a gridded road to freeze over, P, the temperature must fall to negative 10 degrees Celsius or below, Q. Ice has formed on treated surfaces, P. Therefore, the temperature must have fallen to negative 10 degrees Celsius or below, Q. That is a straightforward inference from a necessary condition. Observing the effect, ice on gridded roads, justifies inferring the required condition, very low temperature, even though we may not know the exact circumstances by which it was achieved. Option D matches that pattern exactly. It says, iron melts only above 1538 degrees Celsius. Without that temperature, it is impossible to cast iron, i.e., casting iron, P, requires temperature greater than 1538 degrees Celsius. Q, finding cast iron from 550 BCE, P, occurred, leads to the conclusion that these people must have reached temperatures exceeding 1538 degrees Celsius. Q, the structure is the same. A necessary temperature threshold for a physical process, evidence of the product, and an inference that the threshold was met in the past despite uncertainty about methods. Why D is a closer parallel than the other choices. B and E describe causal facts, but either allow alternate causes for the observed effect, white residue or stale flavor, or are not framed as the same historical threshold inference. A, reasons from failure, bread did not rise, to conclude the necessary condition was absent. That is a different inference and, in real life, could have other explanations, whereas the original argument reasons from the presence of the effect to the presence of the necessary condition. C actually commits the opposite error. It treats a diagnostic definition as if the diagnostic label guaranteed the specific measured value, confusing a defined threshold with the diagnostic practice, so its form and error differ from the original. Thus, D mirrors the original both in logical form, effect to necessary condition, and in context, inferring achievement of a physical temperature threshold from archaeological evidence. So D is the correct parallel. All right, question 41. We're told that advocates of alternative medicine emphasize treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, and that they value psychological states alongside physical symptoms. Yet, when someone suggests their results might be largely due to the placebo effect, they tend to bridle. The author then points out that the placebo effect is precisely an instance of the mind influencing the body. Mind over matter, as it were. So the thrust is a consistency point. If you champion mind-body interaction, you shouldn't object to an explanation that credits mind-body interaction. The conclusion, then, is that advocates of alternative medicine ought to be more open to the placebo effect's possible role in their treatments. The other options either make claims the passage doesn't support or go beyond its scope. It doesn't assert how powerful the placebo is, nor that all medicine involves mind-body interplay. It doesn't call for reassessing effectiveness versus mainstream medicine. And it doesn't condemn any purely physical approach wholesale. The consistent, contained takeaway is option C. So the best answer is C, because it captures the argument's central consistency critique. Alright, question 42. A 4-digit PIN written as two 2-digit square numbers between 10 and 100, all 4 digits different, and when the digits are written as words, they appear in alphabetical order. We're asked for the last digit. My immediate thought is to list the 2-digit squares. Looking at those, we have 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, and 81. That's the small table I'll work from. Next, I need the alphabetical order of the word names of digits. 8, 5, 4, 9, 1, 7, 6, 3, 2, 0. I'll convert that to a ranking. 8 is 1, 5 is 2, 4 is 3, 9 is 4, 8 is 5, 9 is 6, 6 is 7, 3 is 8, 2 is 9, 0 is 10. The key shortcut is to require the 4 digits alphabetical indices to increase left to right, so each adjacent pair must also increase. That immediately rules out any 2-digit square whose own digit order is alphabetically decreasing, because the first 2 positions must increase too. Checking quickly. 16 gives indices 5 to 7 increasing, possible. 25 gives 9 to 2, decreasing, impossible in position 1 to 2. 36 gives 8 to 7, decreasing, impossible. 49 gives 3 to 4 increasing, possible. 64 gives 7 to 3, decreasing, impossible. 81 gives 1 to 5, increasing, possible. So only 16, 49, and 81 can appear as whole 2-digit blocks. Now test concatenations. Remembering digits must be all different, and the index at position 2 must be less than at position 3. Trying them, 49 followed by 16 gives digits 4, 9, 1, 6, indices 3, 4, 5, 7, which is perfectly increasing and no repeats. The others fail either by repeating a digit or breaking the alphabetical order. So the PIN is 4916, and the last digit is 6. Final answer, 6, because 49 plus 16 are the only 2 2-digit squares that together give 4 distinct digits whose word forms are alphabetically ordered. June leaves home at 10 o'clock and walks 10 minutes to Applecross Station, arriving at 10:10. Trains from Applecross to Damsonville depart at 7, 27, and 47 past each hour, so the first he can catch is the 10:27. That reaches Damsonville at 10:54, and a 10-minute walk brings him to Aki's house at 11:04, his earliest possible arrival. He must be home by 16 o'clock, meaning he needs to arrive back at Applecross Station by 15:50 at the latest. From the return timetable, Figtown, Applecross, the latest train from Damsonville that arrives in time is the 15:07, reaching Applecross at 15:34, home at 15:44. To catch that, June must leave Aki's house at 14:57 after a 10-minute walk. That gives the maximum possible time at Aki's, from 11:04 to 14:57, or 3 hours 53 minutes. Now, for the minimum stay, June must still spend at least 1 hour at Aki's. If he arrives later, say on the 12:47 train from Applecross, arriving Damsonville 13:14 to at Aki's 13:24, he can stay exactly 1 hour until 14:24, walk 10 minutes to the station, and catch the 14:47 train home. Arrives Applecross 15:14, home 15:24. That satisfies the 1 hour minimum and the return by 1600 rule. So minimum time at Aki's equals 1 hour, maximum time equals 3 hours 53 minutes. Difference is 3h 53 min minus 100 minute equals 2 hours 53 minutes. Option B. First, compute the actual monthly distances from cumulative totals. March equals 60 kilometers. April equals 122 minus 60 equals 62 kilometers. May equals 186 minus 122 equals 64 kilometers. June, 292 minus 186 equals 106 kilometers. July equals 478 minus 292 equals 186 kilometers. August equals 718 minus 478 equals 240 kilometers. Total equals 718 kilometers. So the slice sizes, percentages, and corresponding angles are March 60 over 718, roughly 8.36%. 360 times 60 over 718 equals 30.1 degrees. April 62 over 718, roughly 8.63% times 31.1 degrees. May 64 over 718, roughly 8.92%. June 106 over 718, roughly 14.76%. July 186 over 718, roughly 25.91%, times 93.3 degrees. 240 over 718, roughly 33.44%, roughly 120.1 degrees. So the correct pie must show three small, almost equal slices of about 30 degrees each, March, April, May. One moderate slice of about 53 degrees, June. One large slice of about 93 degrees, July. And one largest slice of about 120 degrees, August. Option D is the diagram that matches that pattern. It clearly has three small, nearly equal wedges. A medium wedge roughly half as large as the second largest. A second largest wedge noticeably less than a third of the circle, and one wedge about 1/3 of the circle. The other options fail this check. C shows a single wedge far larger than 1/3, so incorrect. A and B display different relative balances, two wedges too large or too similar to each other compared with our 33% versus 25.9% split. E includes an extremely thin wedge that would correspond to a value much smaller than 8 to 9%, which we do not have. Because the numeric proportions above match the wedge sizes shown in D, D is the correct choice. All right, question 45. We're told some private landlords and rental companies refused repairs and even evicted tenants for complaining. That's rightly called an abuse of power. The leap comes next. To protect tenants, only not-for-profit housing associations should be allowed to let to those who can't buy. That recommendation quietly assumes that not-for-profits won't behave abusively or will reliably be better than commercial landlords. But nothing in the evidence supports that. It's an unwarranted leap from some profit makers behave badly to ban profit makers and trust not-for-profits. The distractors don't touch the core flaw. A speculates about tenants being unsatisfactory, beside the point, as retaliatory eviction and refusal of repairs are the issue. B quibbles about whether renters are vulnerable in general, but the conclusion targets those who can't afford to buy. C introduces penalties, irrelevant to the argument's proposed solution. D talks about people who could buy choosing not to, also irrelevant to the policy proposed. The central mistake is assuming not-for-profits are inherently better. So E best captures the flaw.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate, he knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 46. Bill's just used a UK Bridgeford Bank credit card for the first time in August. Looking at this table, three things matter. No interest in the first year, 2.5% on cash withdrawals with a £3 minimum, and 3.5% on transactions abroad with a £5 minimum. Then, at month end, the minimum payment is 2% of whatever's on the statement, i.e., including those fees. Let's build the statement total. UK goods, £2,450. No fee. Cash withdrawal in the UK, £300. Fee is 2.5% of £300, which is £7.50, above the £3 minimum. Abroad purchase in Spain, £500. The foreign transaction fee is 3.5% of £500, equals £17.50, again above the £5 minimum. Add everything. Purchases £2,450 plus 300 plus 500 equals £3,250. Fees £7.50 plus £17.50 equals £25. Statement total. £3,250 plus £25 equals $3,275. Now, the minimum payment is 2% of that. 1% of $3,275 is £32.75. Double it gives £65.50. No rounding complications here. Clean to the penny. So the minimum payment for August is £65.50, which is option D. This one's really about reading the fee rules carefully, applying the minima, and remembering fees get added before calculating the 2% minimum. All right, question 47. The passage makes a general principle explicit. Admiration shouldn't be given simply for natural, untrained ability. The example of Barkat Abdi is used to say, in effect, if success can be achieved without training because of innate qualities, then the esteem for the profession is misplaced. It even likens praising actors for natural talent to congratulating someone for being tall, an unearned trait. So I'm looking for an option that applies that principle, withholding praise or high regard when the performance is due primarily to innate ability rather than acquired skill or effort. Option A says we should not praise a 5-year-old who, on first attempt, hits golf shots cleanly. That's precisely the idea. Don't laud someone for an initial, untrained, natural knack. Option B ranks Mozart's later work higher than his early work. This is about maturation and output quality over time, not the natural talent principle. Option C says long drafting automatically deserves praise. This swings to praising mere effort irrespective of quality, which isn't what the argument claims. Option D blames luck, being in the right place at the right time. The original argument is about innate ability and looks, not mere happenstance. So it's adjacent, but not the principle stated. Option E says someone with a photographic memory doesn't deserve a high salary. That's closer. Again, about innate ability, but it shifts from esteem praise to salary. And the original is framed in terms of high regard. A is a cleaner illustration. So the best match is A, because it directly applies the don't admire natural ability alone principle. All right, question 48. We're picking where to build a 5-story office. We need 3,000 square meters of total floor area and a 600 square meter plot. The total cost in each city is simply construction cost per square meter times 3,000 plus land cost per square meter times 600. Looking at the table, construction/land pairs are Calypso 1,000 and 450, Jaspoon 2,000 and 350, Minoko 1,500 and 500, Sontorius 1,300 and 400, Zentium 1,600 and 350. Let's compute totals quickly. Calypso 3,000 times 1,000 equals 3 million. Land 600 times 450 equals 270,000. Total 3,270,000. Jaspoon 3,000 times 2,000 equals 6 million. Land 600 times 350 equals 210,000. Total 6,210,000. Minoko, 3,000 times 1,500 equals 4,500,000. Land, 600 times 500 equals 300,000. Total, 4,800,000. Sontorius, 3,000 times 1,300 equals 3,900,000. Land, 600 times 400 equals 240,000. Total, 4,140,000. Zentium, 3,000 times 1,600 equals 4,800,000. Land, 600 times 350 equals 210,000. Total, 5,010,000. Now, identify the cheapest and priciest. Cheapest is Calypso at $3.27 million. Most expensive is Jaspoon at $6.21 million. The question asks for the difference between the highest and lowest estimates. 6.21 million minus 3.27 million equals 2.94 million. So the gap is $2,940,000, which matches option E. That's our answer. All right, question 49. We've a short argument about proposed reforms to UK divorce law. It lists benefits: less confrontation, no need to prove conduct, no contesting the divorce, and reduced stress, especially given some cases drag on for years. Then there's a clear prescriptive line. These reforms must be enacted as a matter of urgency. When a passage contains one sentence telling us what must be done, and the rest are reasons why, that imperative is almost always the main conclusion. The points about avoiding the blame game, making the process less confrontational, and easing emotional burden are supporting reasons. Now, to the options. A and B restate specific benefits, useful premises, not the overall claim. D is a general statement about stress from lengthy confrontations. Again, a reason, not the punchline. E, less stressful experience, is close to an intermediate conclusion, but still a benefit marshaled to support the policy claim. The only option that captures the author's central push is C. Reform must happen without delay. So, the main conclusion is the urgency of enacting the reforms. The rest is scaffolding. Final answer, C. Because the text directive must be enacted as a matter of urgency is the thesis that the other claims are designed to support. All right, question 50. A company pays on the fourth Thursday each month or the 26th, whichever is earlier. The actual paydays in order were 24, 24, 26, 26, 23, 26, 25 last month. We must predict this month. My immediate impression, the fourth Thursday must fall between the 22nd and 28th. If the fourth Thursday is after the 26th, pay gets clipped to the 26th. So months showing 24, 23, 25 come from fourth Thursdays on those exact dates. Months showing 26 could be either a fourth Thursday on the 26th or later than the 26th, so pay clipped. A useful trick: represent the fourth Thursday as first Thursday date plus 21. Let D be the date of the first Thursday 1 to 7. Then the fourth Thursday is D plus 21, and D shifts month to month by subtracting the previous month's length modulo 7. We can work backwards from the known exact ones. From the two initial 24s, we get D equals 3 for the first 2 months. That implies the first month had length equals 0 mod 7, i.e. February with 28 days. Stepping forward through real month lengths, 28, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, gives a single consistent sequence of D values that matches the observed pays. Feb, D equals 3, 4th 3rd, 24. Mar, D equals 3, 24. April, D7, 28, clipped to 26. May, D5, 26. June, D2, 23. July, D7, 28, clipped to 26. Aug, D4, 25, last month. So the next month would be September, D shifts by September's previous month length. August equals 31 days, shift 3, giving D equals 4 minus 3 equals 1. Fourth Thursday is 22, so pay this month is the 22nd. Final answer, 22nd, option A. Brief reason. Consistent calendar month length shifts force the only coherent sequence, leading to a fourth Thursday on the 22nd.